What if the reason your life hasn't changed isn't because you don't know what to do, but because you keep choosing not to do it? Sit with that for a second, because deep down, you already know. You know you should wake up earlier. You know you should stop scrolling so much. You know you should start that thing you keep thinking about at night. And yet, nothing changes. Not really. Days pass, weeks pass, and somehow you're still in the same place, with the same thoughts, the same excuses. And here's the uncomfortable part. It's not confusion. It's avoidance. Be honest. Does this feel familiar? You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time. You say you need more motivation. You convince yourself that tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow keeps turning into the same version of today. And that's when it hits you. Maybe the problem isn't your situation. Maybe it's the quiet deal you've been making with yourself. The one where you say, "I'll start later." But later never comes. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Your brain is incredibly good at protecting you from discomfort. Not danger, discomfort. There's a difference. Because waking up early isn't dangerous. Working on your goals isn't dangerous. Facing your own potential isn't dangerous. It just feels uncomfortable. And your mind? It's wired to avoid that feeling at all costs. So it gives you excuses. Smart ones, convincing ones. I'm too tired. I'll do it when I feel ready. I just need a little more time. But those aren't reasons. They're shields. And the worst part? You believe them. Think about it. Why do we keep doing this even when we know better? Why do we choose short-term comfort over long-term change? Hold that question in your mind. Because the answer is about to change everything. But first, you need to see something clearly. Right now, you're living in a loop. Wake up, do what's easy, avoid what's hard, promise to change, repeat. It's subtle, almost invisible, but it's there. And every time you repeat that loop, you reinforce a version of yourself. Not the one you want to become, the one that avoids becoming it. Let that sink in. You're not stuck because life is unfair. You're stuck because your habits are stronger than your intentions. And intentions don't mean anything without action. That's the gap nobody talks about. The gap between knowing and doing. And that gap? That's where your life is being decided. Every single day. Here's a strange thought. You don't need more information. You don't need another video, another plan, another perfect routine. You already have enough. So why aren't you moving? This next part changes everything. It's not about what you know. It's about what you tolerate. You tolerate distractions. You tolerate procrastination. You tolerate being almost the person you want to be. And as long as you tolerate it, nothing changes. Because your life doesn't rise to your expectations. It falls to your standards. And right now, your standards are quietly letting you stay where you are. That's not an attack. That's awareness. Because the moment you see it, you can change it. But before you do, there's something you need to face. Resistance. That voice in your head that says, "This is too hard. That's not who I am. I'll never stay consistent." That voice, it's not you. It's a pattern, built from repetition, strengthened by avoidance. And every time you listen to it, you make it stronger. But here's the twist. The moment you stop listening, it starts to lose power.
Not instantly, not magically, but gradually. And that's where the shift begins. I used to think something was wrong with me because of this. Like, why can't I just do the things I know I should do? Why does it feel like I'm fighting myself all the time? Maybe you felt that too. Like you have potential, but you can't seem to access it consistently. Like you're capable, but somehow stuck. If that hits, you're not alone. But here's the truth. You're not broken. You're just undisciplined in the moments that matter. And discipline? It's not something you feel. It's something you do, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. And that's where most people stop, because they're waiting for motivation to show up first. But motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Discipline stays. But this is where things change. Because once you understand this, you stop negotiating with yourself. No more, I'll do it later. No more, just 5 more minutes. You either do it or you don't. Simple. Not easy, but simple. And that simplicity, it's powerful. Because it removes the gray area where excuses live. Now, here's a quiet challenge. If this makes sense, don't overthink it. Just notice it. Because awareness is the first step, but it's not the last. The real question is, what are you going to do next?
Because here's where it gets uncomfortable. Awareness without action? That's just another form of procrastination. You see the pattern. You understand the problem. You even feel that push to change. And then you do nothing. Not because you don't care, but because action feels heavier than intention. And this is where most people get stuck, not in ignorance, but in hesitation. Now think about this for a second. How many times have you told yourself, I'll start tomorrow? Not once, not twice, dozens, maybe hundreds. And every time you said it, you felt a little relief, like you gave yourself permission to delay. But what you were actually doing was training your brain to escape. Now here's the part that stings a little. Every time you delay action, you build trust in your excuses and lose trust in yourself. Slowly, quietly, until one day, you stop believing your own promises. You say you'll do something, and a part of you already knows you won't. That's not laziness. That's broken self-trust. Now pause. Have you ever felt that? Like you can't rely on yourself anymore? Because if you have, this is the moment you start fixing it. But here's where it gets real. You don't rebuild self-trust with big promises. You rebuild it with small kept ones. Tiny actions, done consistently, even when they seem insignificant. Because every time you follow through, you send a signal to yourself. I do what I say. And that signal, it compounds. Now this next part, this is where everything flips. Because most people think discipline is about doing more. It's not. It's about doing what you already decided, without backing out. That's it. No extra motivation. No dramatic transformation. Just alignment between what you say and what you do. Now let me ask you something. What's one thing you said you'd do today, but haven't done yet? Don't justify it. Don't explain it. Just notice it. Because that moment right there, that's your battlefield. Not your entire life, not your big goals, just that one decision. Do it or avoid it. And here's the truth. Every time you choose to act, you shrink the gap. Every time you avoid it, you widen it. Simple. Now this next part, this is where resistance gets louder. Because once you start acting, your brain will push back harder. It'll say, this isn't sustainable. You're doing too much. You can take a break. And again, it sounds reasonable. That's the trap. Because excuses don't sound like excuses. They sound like logic. But let's be honest for a second. Has that logic been helping you move forward or keeping you comfortable? Think about it, because this is where you stop trusting every thought you have. Not all thoughts are useful. Some are just patterns trying to keep you the same. Now here's the shift winners make. They don't argue with their thoughts. They override them. Action first, thoughts later. And that might feel backwards, but it works. Because action creates clarity, not the other way around. Now imagine this. You don't feel like doing something. Instead of thinking about it, you just start. No debate, no delay. And within minutes, that resistance starts fading. Not completely, but enough to keep going. That's how momentum works. It doesn't come before action. It comes after. Now pause. Which one are you waiting for right now? Motivation or momentum? Because they're not the same. And waiting for the wrong one keeps you stuck. Now here's where it gets deeper. Because this isn't just about productivity, it's about identity. Right now, your actions are telling a story about who you are. Not your intentions, your actions. And if you keep choosing avoidance, that story becomes permanent. I'm the type of person who doesn't follow through. But the moment you start acting consistently, that story changes. I'm the type of person who does what needs to be done. And once that identity shifts, everything else follows. But this next part, this is where most people struggle the most. Because changing your identity means letting go of your excuses. And excuses, they've been protecting you for a long time. So giving them up? It doesn't feel natural. It feels like loss. Like you're removing your safety net. But here's the truth. That safety net? It's been keeping you stuck. Not safe, stuck. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. And once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. That moment when you reach for your phone instead of starting. That second where you hesitate, then choose comfort. That quiet thought that says, it's not that important. It is. It's always that important. Because it's never just about the task. It's about the pattern. Now, here's where things get deeper. Because most people think they have a time problem. I don't have enough time. I'm too busy. I'll do it later. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is priority. You always have time for what you prioritize. Always. You just don't like what that reveals. Now sit with that for a second. Because if something truly mattered to you, you'd find a way. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but consistently. And that's the difference. Now here's the part that might hit. You don't lack discipline. You lack clarity on what you refuse to tolerate. Because once something becomes unacceptable, you change, immediately. No motivation needed. Think about it. If you absolutely refused to stay where you are, what would you do differently today? Don't answer quickly, because this is where everything starts to shift. Now this next part, this is where resistance shows up again. Because your brain will try to soften the truth. It'll say, you're being too hard on yourself. You deserve rest. You've already done enough. And sometimes, that's true. But most of the time, it's just another way to avoid discomfort. Now let me ask you something. How do you know when to rest and when you're just avoiding? That question matters, because there's a difference. Rest comes after effort. Avoidance comes before it. And if you're honest, you know which one you're doing. Now this next idea, this is where everything connects. Because once you stop making excuses, you start facing reality. Not the version you tell yourself, the actual one, where your results reflect your actions, not your intentions. And that can be uncomfortable, but it's also freeing, because now you know exactly what to fix. No confusion, no guessing, just cause and effect. Now imagine this. Every action you take today is a vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you act, you vote for discipline. Every time you avoid, you vote for excuses. And those votes, they add up until one identity wins. Now pause. Which identity are you feeding right now? Don't say what you want it to be. Look at your actions, because they're already answering that question. Now here's the shift winners make. They stop trying to feel like a disciplined person and start acting like one, even when it feels fake, even when it feels forced, because they understand something powerful. Identity follows behavior, not the other way around. Now think about that. You don't become confident, then act. You act, and then confidence builds. You don't become disciplined, then work. You work, and discipline builds. It's always action first. Always. Now this next part, this is where most people quit. Because acting without feeling ready feels uncomfortable. It feels unnatural. It feels like you're forcing something. And you are, at first. But that's the process. That's how change works. It feels wrong until it becomes normal. And once it becomes normal, it becomes who you are. Now here's a quiet realization. You've already done this before. Not with discipline, but with your current habits. At some point, scrolling constantly felt weird. Procrastinating felt uncomfortable. Avoiding things felt unnatural. But you repeated it. And now, it's automatic. That's how powerful repetition is. So imagine using that same process for the person you actually want to become. Now this next part, this is where everything locks in. Because at some point, you stop asking, should I do this? And start saying, this is what I do. No debate, no hesitation, just action. And that's when excuses lose their power completely. But getting there, it requires one thing most people avoid: consistency when it's inconvenient. And that's where everything is decided. And that's the moment everything changes. Not when life gets easier, but when your standards get stronger. Because once you decide, truly decide, that excuses are no longer part of who you are, you stop looking for ways out. You start looking for ways through. And that shift, it's subtle, but it's powerful. Now here's what most people misunderstand. They think the goal is to eliminate struggle. It's not. The goal is to become someone who can handle it. Because struggle isn't the problem. Avoidance is. Struggle means you're doing something that matters. Avoidance means you're running from it. And deep down, you know the difference. Now pause for a second. Which one have you been choosing lately? Because that answer, it's shaping your entire life. Not in big, dramatic moments, but in small, daily decisions. Now here's where it all comes together. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need a complete life reset. You don't need to wait for the right time. You just need to stop giving yourself permission to stay the same. That's it. Because every time you say, "It's okay, I'll do it later," you reinforce the version of you that doesn't follow through. And every time you say, "No, I'm doing this now," you build the version that does. Simple, but not easy. Now imagine this. A few months from now, nothing magical has happened. No overnight success, no huge breakthrough, but something is different. You show up.
even when you don't feel like it. You follow through, even when it's inconvenient. You act, even when it's uncomfortable. And slowly, your life starts to reflect that. Your results improve, your confidence builds, your mind gets quieter. Because there's no more internal conflict, no more arguing with yourself. Just clarity, just action. Now here's the part most people miss. That version of you, it's not built in big moments. It's built in the small ones. The moments where no one is watching. The moments where it would be easier to quit. The moments where you could make an excuse and no one would know except you. And that's the only person that matters. Because self-respect, it doesn't come from what others see. It comes from what you know you did or didn't do. Now let me say something clearly. You don't need to prove anything to the world, but you do need to prove something to yourself. That you can be trusted. That when you say you'll do something, you actually do it. Because once you have that, everything changes. Decisions get easier. Confidence becomes natural. Progress becomes inevitable. Not because it's easy, but because you've removed the option to quit. Now here's a thought to sit with. What would your life look like if you stopped making excuses completely? Not less, not fewer, none. How different would your days be, your habits, your results? Don't rush that answer, because it's not just a question, it's a possibility, and it's closer than you think. But here's the truth. No one is coming to force you. No one is coming to push you. No one is coming to save you. It's you. It's always been you. And that might feel heavy, but it's also freeing. Because it means you're in control, right now. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. Now this is the part where most people nod their head, feel inspired, and then go back to their old patterns. Don't do that. Not this time. Do something small, something real, something you've been avoiding. Right after this, no thinking, no planning, just action. Because that's how this starts. Not with motivation, but with movement. And once you move, everything else follows. So if this hits something in you, don't ignore it. Don't scroll past it. Hold on to it. Because this isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming consistent. It's about becoming someone who doesn't run from what they already know they need to do. No excuses, just action. And if you're ready to become that person, stay with this, subscribe, and keep building a version of your life that finally matches your potential.